Okay everyone, so in this next lesson, I just want to go and talk about the colspan attribute that we can apply to TD and TH elements. So if we would want to go and span two columns inside of our table, specifically targeting a TD element, we can do this by specifying the attribute here and giving it a number value. So if we go to this example, you would see that the last table row has a call span of 2 that produces this display on the browser. So we have the first table row that contains the TH or table headers, and we have the second row that contains the first value of the month and the savings for that specific month, and the third row will be the second month and the savings for that month. And here you would see that the cell here is spanning up to 2 columns. Besides from the call span attribute, we can also apply a row span attribute inside of our TD and TH elements. And if we go to this example here, you would see that we have in this case a row span that will be spanning vertically inside of our table. So we have our January second row or table row here that contains the January table data cell, and we have a table data cell that spans the row or uses the row span that has a value of 2 here, and that's why it occupied the space of the table row that we have here that contains the February and the $80 value here. So in row spans, it will be spanning the rows of a table vertically, and with call spans, it will be spanning the table data cells horizontally. So that will be very useful, especially if you would want to do the same things that we have here. If you're going to have, for example, a total value here and you would want to go and try to organize your data inside of your tables. I would also suggest that you go through the documentation for the TD call span attribute and the TD row span attribute here. So at least you would be able to go and gather some more information when it comes to using the row span and the call span attribute. But now I want to go back to our code here, and I would want to go and apply the call span attribute in our project here. So I would want to go and apply the call span attribute here for our TH element that contains the story author value. So let's go and try to apply that in our code editor so that this will be occupying the cells that will be equivalent to the width of the last name and the first name table data cells in our second row. So let me just go back to our code editor here, and I'm going down to our section tables, and I'm going to go here and apply a call span value equivalent to 2. Now let's go back to our browser and refresh this. You would see now that the story author header is now centered and is now occupying at least 2 column span inside of our table that will be equivalent to the first row here, equivalent to the width of the last name and the first name table data cells. If we go back to our code editor and try to give this a value of 3, let's see what will happen. You would see that the width of the table header that contains the story author value here is now occupying the width of the 3 table data cells that we have here. Just try to remember the documentations that we have here. We know that the table header has a default value of text aligned center, and that's why the story author here is aligned center and the story title here is aligned center. And this set of text in our third row here is occupying the whole width of the table data cell here because it's the longest set of words that occupies the table data cell, and that's why the width of the story title here is also based from the width of the My Beloved Dog Tiger table data cell. And if we go back to our documentation here, this is happening mainly because we know the tables are not automatically responsive, and tables are sized according to their content by default. This is the reason why when we use tables for layouting, we will need to go and do some extra measures when it comes to styling, especially if we will be working with responsive web design. You would also notice in our project that the original stories table header is now in a column that doesn't contain any content, mainly because the table column span here has now occupied the table rows here based from the number value that we have given it. So you have to consider and plan when you're working with your tables that these are things that could happen once we use the call span and the row span values. Now let's go back to our code editor and let's give it the value of 2 again. So at least we will be able to go and only have 2 column span. And I want to change the color of this to white. Let's refresh that. Now before we go and proceed with our other exercises, I would want you to figure out on how you can go and center this container of our table and have our header here also centered on our browser. So this will be our coding challenge for this lesson. So in the next lesson, I will run you through on how you can go and do this. But for now, I want you to test yourself and try to go and figure out on how to go and center this table here in the middle of our browser.